Welcome to the Couch Scouts Podcast. We provide league-winning analysis, advice, and tools to help you dominate your league and build a dynasty. Scout, draft, win. Here's your host, Matt Cooper.
Welcome to the Couch Scouts Podcast. I am your host, Matt Cooper, and with me is my co-host, Matt Rupert.
How's it going, my man?
I'm doing good, and unfortunately, we're missing Matt Jackson tonight. He is feeling under the weather, so prayers up for Jackson. Hope you're feeling better soon, my man. But we're going to hold down the fort tonight, and on tonight's podcast, of course, we're continuing our Inside the Prospect series, but rather than, we're kind of continuing a little bit of the trend last week. So we've been doing running backs and wide receivers for almost every week since December. Obviously, there's a lot more of those positions, but we don't want to totally neglect quarterback and tight end. So last week, while I was out, y'all did a little quarterback showdown. And this week, we're going to do a little bit of a tight end showdown. So we're going to take the consensus top two tight ends, Tyler Warren and Colston Loveland. And we did a deep dive on the tape for both of them. And we're just going to do a little compare and contrast. We'll go position by position. And for each one, we'll just kind of debate which one did we think was stronger in that area. And hopefully as we go along, you guys will get a feel for what both of these players are like, where we have them graded, where we would rank them, all that kind of stuff. And then tonight on the bonus podcast, we're going to hit a couple of less consensus tight end names. We're going to hit Elijah Arroyo and Harold Fannin Jr. But here for the main show, we got Tyler Warren. We got Colston Loveland. Penn State for Tyler Warren. Michigan, Colston Loveland. Both very productive. Both, really athletic, fun to watch. Both considered probable first-round picks. So we got a lot to talk about. And before we get into the trait-by-trait breakdown, let's just start with a little bit of background on each of these guys. So first, you've got Tyler Warren. 6'5", 256 pounds, senior out of Penn State, was a former three-star prospect, was the number 21 tight end in his draft class, so was not a highly touted prospect, which, often is the case with tight ends. They're so unpredictable. The guys that you think are going to be amazing coming into college sometimes never see the field, and then the guys that come out of nowhere. So Warren is one of those guys. For his first 3 years, he didn't do a ton. He had a career-high 34 catches as a junior for 422 yards and 7 touchdowns. Is an okay season, respectable season. But this year, man, 104 receptions at the tight end position. That's some bonkers production. 1,233 receiving yards, 8 receiving touchdowns. And by the way, he was involved as a runner too. They used him as a wildcat quarterback. They ran him into the end zone a bunch in the red zone. So, yeah, a lot of production there for Tyler Warren this season. 218 yards rushing and 4 rushing touchdowns to add to that receiving profile. And then there's Colston Loveland, also 6'5", 248-pound junior from Michigan, was the former 4-star prospect, the number 10 tight end in his class. And this year was not his career best year. He actually last year had 649 receiving yards and 4 touchdowns. This year he took a small step back, 582 receiving yards, 5 touchdowns. So those numbers don't pop out at you the way that Tyler Warren's did. But there's a reason for that. Context is key. Michigan had no quarterback this year. Their passing offense was an abomination. So that's the context you need to keep in mind. Like, if you're just looking at box scores, you're going to be like, dude, no competition. Tyler Warren's the better prospect. But that's why you have us, because we go deeper than the box score. We get, well into the all-22 tape. We watch every snap, multiple games, and we break it all down for you guys. So that's why we're here. A lot of preamble here talking about 2 players. But let's get into it. You ready to get into it, Rupert?
Yeah, let's get into it. A quick note. So this is our first year developing our grading system for tight ends. So it's still a little bit of a work in progress. So it's been fun to actually grade them out this year. And there's some really good ones, and excited to talk about them all tonight.
Yeah, so we have ranked tight ends before. In last year's rookie guide, we included tight ends in our rankings, but we did not have them included in our film grading system. So, yeah, that's a new addition, and of course, still working out the kinks a little bit, but it's been fun for sure to be able to have a numerical, hey, this is how we think this guy projects to the next level. So, with receiving positions, we always start with route running. We feel like, from a fantasy football perspective, the first thing you got to do is get open to earn those targets, earn those sweet PPR points. And that is definitely true for wide receiver. I think it's true for tight end as well. We have our weights for the film grade a little bit different, a little bit, some attributes are weighted higher for the tight end or lower for the tight end than they would be for wide receiver. It's not a 1-to-1 thing, but we still, in both cases, I mean, if you're a pass catcher for fantasy purposes, we want you to be able to run routes. So running routes, it's not unimportant for the tight end. So let's start there with Colston Loveland and Tyler Warren. Who did you think was the better route runner, Matt Rupert?
I thought Loveland was the better route runner. To me, I felt like he ran routes at all three levels, whereas I felt like Warren was a little bit more the short intermediate kind of specialist. And then what we'll talk about later, getting some yards after catch. I thought he could really run the whole route tree as a tight end. He looks really good attacking the seam, doing a post or a corner route, as well as playing underneath and finding soft spots in the zone. I thought he was really advanced here for a college player. I gave Loveland an 8, and I still gave Warren a good grade with a 7. Both of them were two of the strongest in this class.
Yeah, I mean, I had Loveland higher as well, and it's not a knock on Tyler Warren. I had Tyler Warren at a 7, which is a good grade. It's good. He's a good route runner, above average. I didn't think he was overly crisp or twitchy on his routes, Tyler Warren. I thought most of his routes looked pretty linear, which is fine for a tight end. Like, that would be a big knock on a guy if he's a wide receiver, but a lot of the tight end routes are more linear. Find the soft spot in the zone, run straight down the seam and beat a linebacker, run straight and then turn into a dig route. Like those are the type of routes that tight ends run. There's not as much of the twitchy, crisp routes for the most part. Now, Colston Loveland, he's a little bit of an exception. I'm going to talk about him in a minute. I would say it's not a necessary trait, but it's really nice when you have it. For Tyler Warren, he was great at finding the soft spot in the zone. He really, like, the tight end classic routes, like your little hitch, your dig, your go route up the seam, the fake block and then leak out on a play action. Tyler Warren was fantastic at all those routes. So I'm not saying he's a bad route runner. But Colston Loveland, I gave a 9 for route running. I just thought he blew me away. I mean, every time he was put, like, he wasn't just a zone killer. If they put a man-to-man on him, it was no shot for that guy to cover him. I mean, Colston Loveland, he had a great release. They tried pressing him. He had a filthy release against press coverage. And, he could run every route in the tree. He looked like a wide receiver running routes out there. He was really crisp and twitchy in and out of his breaks. Like you said, all three levels of the field: posts, corners, goes, digs, slants, outs, like you name it. Colston Loveland was running those routes, and he was winning with athleticism and with technique. So linebackers had no shot to cover Colston Loveland. He was an absolute menace against the linebackers. And honestly, like, when they put slot corners on him, he was too big and he'd bully them too. So Colston Loveland, really, really special in the route running department. Let's get into the ball skills. That's always the second area that we talk about here. And so that's hands, contested catch radius, body control. What did you notice here? Who stood out to you in this department, Rupert?
Tower Warren really did. This may be an effect of Loveland getting a lot more separation, but I feel like I saw Tower Warren just dominate with contested catches, being physical with whoever's on him. Even if he's covered and doesn't get open on his route, he's still open. Like, just throw it back shoulder. He can adjust to it. He can fight through a linebacker to come back to the ball. There was just a lot to really like there. And then, so I gave Warren an 8.5 for contested catch. I gave him a 7.5 for catch radius, 8 for body control, and 8.5 for physicality. He was just so physical with whoever was on him. It was really fun to watch. And then Loveland, on the other hand, was really good as well. I felt like he was just like a little bit more finesse with it. Like, he's just going to, jump over you and snatch it. Just beautiful body control. I give him a 9 for body control, 8.5 for catch radius, and 8 for his hands. He was just like one of those guys that was just reminiscent of like a Tony Gonzalez or Jimmy Graham, just very kind of graceful. Like, if you throw him a back shoulder, he's going to time it perfect, jump up, spin around, catch it, land, and keep going. It was just really impressive. Both of them in this category, just in a little bit different ways.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I had, as you were reading off your grades, I was like, is he reading my grades? I think physicality is the biggest difference between the two guys, because I had 8.5 for physicality for Tyler Warren, and I had a 7 for Loveland, which is still a respectable score. It's not like he was out there getting bullied, but like you said, more of a finesse player. And man, Tyler Warren was smash mouth. I mean, he would post you up and catch it in your face with a guy draped all over him. He always won the hand fights. So I had both of these guys at an 8 for catch radius. I thought, they're both 6'5". They've got long arms. They can jump. They can go up and high point the ball. But Loveland did that just a little bit better. I don't know if he had longer arms. I haven't looked at that from the combine. I know they got measured out on wingspan and all that. Or maybe he jumps a little bit better, or more comfortable catching away from his frame. I don't know. It's close.
I did feel like he jumped a little bit better. That was like a note that I had. I feel like he just had better explosion vertically.
Yeah. But I'm with you. I had a 9 for Colston Loveland for body control for those reasons. Like, he just contorted his body and made some pretty crazy catches that way. But in the contested situations, I had Loveland at a 7, and I had Warren at an 8.5. I feel like when it was a contested situation, Warren just had a little bit more of that dog in him to go up and bully the other guy. So both really solid, respectable ball skills, slight edge to Warren in that category for me. So we've got Loveland winning the route running. We've got Warren with a slight edge in the ball skills. Let's get into the athleticism and the yards after catch. What did you notice here?
Both of them are incredible athletes. Again, also in different ways. I have Loveland being a little bit faster in a straight line, and I have them both with pretty similar burst and quickness. I feel like in a long foot race, Loveland would take the lead there. But where this translates in Warren's favor is with the yak. He really knows how to, he has good vision for like stringing moves together. He can juke guys. He seems really quick in a phone booth for such a big guy. And I gave a 9 for Yak to Tower Warren, 8 to Colston Loveland. I feel like, again, Loveland was a little bit more of the finesse player there. I gave 8.5 for game speed to Loveland. I gave a 7 to Warren. I felt like he was more of a in quick spaces, kind of like a slot receiver almost, where they're quicker more than they are fast. And I gave him an 8 for both burst and quickness.
Yeah, so again, we saw it really similarly here. I did have the gap a little bit wider on yards after catch. So I'll talk about that in a minute. I agree with you, though. I think Loveland is faster. I saw more examples of Loveland running in a straight line up the seam and just straight outrunning linebackers. I think he's more of that size speed mismatch than Tyler Warren. I had them both at an 8 for burst. So I thought Tyler Warren's initial burst was really good in short areas. But again, that long speed, like you said, just slight edge to Loveland. So I had Warren at a 7, Loveland at an 8 for game speed, both of them at an 8 for burst. And then quickness, I had a slight edge to Loveland. I had Loveland at a 7.5, and a lot of that was again because of the twitchy quickness in and out of his route breaks that I didn't see from Warren laterally. But I thought Warren showed more laterally after the catch. So, he was more elusive, did some more exaggerated kind of jump cuts to make guys miss. After the catch, I had Loveland at a 6.5, which is, again, it's not a terrible score. 6 is NFL average. So I had him just slightly above NFL average. I felt like for the most part, he would get what was blocked for him. And then the first guy that would get to him, he'd go down. I didn't see a lot of Loveland getting extra. But Warren, man, it was all over his tape. Like the physicality to just like smash dudes in the mouth and knock them over, pancaking dudes, was really, really impressive. And then you had that little bit of elusiveness too, and the short area burst to defeat angles. Like he was catching it on more of the short to intermediate routes, like you said, whereas Loveland was getting more stuff deep down the field. But Warren, and then you got the fact that they're handing him the ball in the Wildcat as a quarterback. They're handing it off to him as a running back. Like they're looking for ways to get the ball in Warren's hands because when he does, he's going to make good things happen. And you saw some similar stuff with Brock Bowers. And I'm not saying Tyler Warren is Brock Bowers type of prospect, but like Georgia found ways to get the ball in his hands because he was such a savant after the catch. You're running tight end screens. You're doing all this stuff. And in the same way that Georgia did that with Bowers, Penn State was doing that with Warren. And of course, if an NFL team, I don't think that they will. I think that was more of a college gimmicky thing to put him at Wildcat. But if an NFL team, every time they got in the red zone, just decided to stick Warren at the Wildcat and let him run, that's fantasy gold right there. Even the chance that could possibly be on the table, even in certain situations. He did a lot of that Travis Kelce where he runs across in motion in front of the quarterback, and then right as he passes by the quarterback, he gets that little shovel pass that Mahomes does to Kelce all the time. Warren did that a ton at Penn State. In fact, a lot of his 104 receptions were, just little shovel passes like that because I saw it multiple times a game. But, yeah, they were looking to get the ball in his hands because he's incredible after the catch. So I had him at 8.5. I could have gone up to a 9. That's a real strength for Tyler Warren.
I had this note.
Now we have.
I had this note when he was in the Wildcat, like how evident his burst is. I felt like he got to the line so quick with that. And the whole time watching Warren, I was just like, man, old school NFL coach is just going to salivate over this guy. Like Pete Carroll's probably watching that film just drooling.
Yeah. We got one more real important category to talk about for the tight end, and it's one that we don't usually cover for receivers. But before we get to that, I wanted to take a quick break to shout out our Couch Scouts website. So CouchScouts.com. This is the best time of year to join the Couch Scouts family. Rookie guide, rookie content is our bread and butter. We've been covering these prospects in depth since December. By the time we're all said and done, we're going to have 70 prospects at least in the rookie guide. We have volume 1 out now with about 40 prospects in it. So you can go in there and start to, a lot of the big names we've covered, they're in there. If you're drafting early before the NFL draft and you need advice on your rookie draft now, we've got you with volume 1 of the rookie guide. Or if you just want to get in there and start reading our breakdowns so you can start to kind of inform yourself on who these players are that you're going to be drafting in a little over a month. It's out there, but version 2 is coming in April. It's going to be 70 prospects deep. And you might be doing a little bit of math in your head and going, wait a minute, I play in a 12-team league, 4 rounds, that's 48. So 70, I mean, that's 30 guys that aren't even, almost 30 guys that aren't even going to get covered, that aren't going to get taken in my league. That's the kind of value we want to offer to you guys. And really the reason that we do that is because when you dig that deep, you're going to find somebody that nobody else is talking about. And I'm not going to spoil it because I'm going to keep it for our paying members, but I'm just going to tell you that we found one of those this week. I mean, we're in the doldrums of like grinding these guys. They're like, that's probably not even going to get drafted. He's definitely not going to be fantasy relevant. Why are we doing a write-up on this guy? Well, one, it's because somebody's curious about him. Somebody is somewhere hyping this dude up, and the listeners need to know, is this legit or not? Should I care about this guy? But if you're digging through there, you're eventually going to find a diamond in the rough. And I'm just telling you, we found one this week. Subscribe to CouchScouts.com. Right now, we're running a promo, RGV1. That's short for Rookie Guide Volume 1, RGV1. It'll give you 40% off any of our annual packages. So you can subscribe for less than $5 a month, because $5 a month is what you would pay monthly. You already get 15% off for doing it annual, and then you get another 40% off of that with the code. So you can get a whole year for some of our packages for just $30. I think it's a complete steal. The Rookie Guide alone is worth that. We also have bonus podcasts. We've got an all 22 film room. You can sign up for a one-on-one consultation with us to meet, and we'll go over your team with you. So much value packed into that thing. CouchScouts.com. Appreciate you guys listening to our little ad break there. Let's get back into these two great tight ends. You got something you want to add to that, Rupert?
Yeah, I was just going to say, me and Cooper are going to be fighting over this guy we found this week in every single draft that we're in together. It's going to be brutal.
It's the thing, man.
It's going to be brutal.
I mean, one, when you publish your takes for other people, and then two, when you play in league mates with your podcast co-host, you miss out on your guys more than you should. But you know what? It's part of the price of admission there. So
we're both the reason why we don't have 100% Bucky Irving shares.
That's right. If I was not playing in leagues with Matthew Rupert, I would have 100% Bucky Irving, and vice versa. So let's continue on. I hinted that we had one final category to talk about, and it's not necessarily the most sexy or exciting thing to talk about from a fantasy perspective. But for a tight end, I think it's really important, and that is blocking. Now, again, blocking does not score you fantasy points. As far as weighting traits to see, which one is going to play the most into our film grading system, I will say that we have this. It's a grade for our running backs, pass protection. And it kind of plays into physicality for our wide receivers, even though it's not a standalone grade for our wide receivers. But even for the running backs with Pass Pro, it's like weighted pretty low because it doesn't score you fantasy points, and we're a fantasy website. It's a little higher for tight ends because if you don't do it, it's such a huge part of their job as a player. Like, it's such a huge part of the position. And if you don't do it well, it can land you on the bench. It can hurt your draft capital. There's so many things with it that just make it ultra important for the tight end. Even a lot of their routes, it's like, I'm going to pretend to block on a play action, and then I'm going to leak out. But if you're not a threat to block, then the defense doesn't have to pay any attention to that. So we've got it weighted a little higher. Still not as high as like route running, ball skills, all that, because at the end of the day, we're a fantasy site. But let's talk about blocking, because I think it is important. Who's the better blocker here, Matt Rupert?
Not to say that Loveland's bad at it, but Tyler Warren is just weeks ahead of him. And frankly, of every other tight end prospect I've scouted so far. Just like with contested catch and his yards after catch, he's just like a bully. Again, old school coaches are going to love him. He seems to really relish getting in there, pancaking guys, moving the line of scrimmage back. He plays with an extremely strong base, really good technique, kind of keeps his hands inside, and he's actually an asset there at tight end for your run game and pass protection. And then he because he's so good at blocking, he does a really good job of those little fake sells and then going out on a route. So it's not to say that I thought Loveland was bad at it. I gave him a 6, gave Tyler Warren an 8.5. I just thought that Loveland was, not a liability. A lot of times he was kind of being used in motion to kind of give him a little bit of head of steam so he can, kick out that defensive end on an outside run or things like that. I didn't see him consistently moving the pile, but he was, holding his blocks, so he wasn't getting pushed back and the defensive end is going to blow up the play because of him. So I thought he was solid there. Not going to be a liability in NFL. I don't think it's going to be anything that keeps him off the field. I think that Warren's a differentiator there.
Yeah, so I saw it very similarly. I won't add a whole lot to your analysis. Pretty spot on. I did have Loveland a little higher. You said you had him at a 6. I had him at a 7. Not a huge difference there. I thought he's a little better. 6 is average. I thought he's a little better than average as a blocker. I thought he was pretty consistently getting the job done, pushing guys back, opening up lanes for his runner, protecting his quarterback. He was more than just not a liability. I thought, overall he was an asset in the blocking game, but not to the level that Warren was. I had Warren at an 8.5, same as you. So my very first note that I made, because it stood out multiple times the first game I watched, was he's pancaking dudes as a blocker, very physical player. I mean, that's the first thing I wrote down before I even said anything about catching passes or whatever. This dude's pancaking people. So I will say, as much as I talked about how important blocking is, it can at times be almost a detriment when you're that good at it. Because a guy like Colston Loveland, who's good enough to be on the field, but not so good at it that you want to use him that way all the time, it's almost the sweet spot for a tight end prospect from a fantasy perspective. I think of Mark Andrews. When you look historically at Mark Andrews' career, he's like a 98% route participation, gets asked to block 2% of the time. I'm making that number up, but it's something like that, right? It's very heavy towards he's out there to run routes and catch passes. They're not asking him to block a lot. And then by comparison, you look at a guy like George Kittle. George Kittle obviously has been a very good fantasy tight end. He's a very good real life tight end, but he can be a little bit boom or bust. He's not necessarily a high target guy because he's not out there running as many routes because he's blocking 25, 30% of the time. That's what he's asked to do. So, add up those numbers, that difference in, 15, 20% of the time more that Mark Andrews is out there running routes while Kittle's blocking, it does make a difference from a fantasy perspective. So, and Kittle actually is a guy that Warren reminds me of a lot. But Kittle's not this super advanced route you up, twitchy in and out of his breaks route runner. He's smash mouth, great blocker. He's going to fake block, leak out in a play action, catch a huge chunk play down the field, run you over, win a contested catch. All the things that Warren excels at, I think Kittle excels at. So that's a strong comp for me, I think, for the two of them. And for Loveland, he's a little bit more Travis Kelce to me. And I know that's lofty. I mean, obviously Travis Kelce is the greatest fantasy tight end ever. So I'm not saying Colston Loveland is going to be that. I'm just talking play style in terms of being, asked to block a little bit less, but he can do it when he has to, but he's a great route runner. Kelce's better after the catch than Loveland is, but stylistically, that's kind of the vein of player that I think you're talking about here. And they're both excellent prospects. I think they both deserve to go in the first round of the NFL draft. Would you agree?
Yeah, 100% agree. I had the exact same Kittle comp for Warren, due to the exact same reasons, funny enough. And then
we didn't even talk about that. So
it's just very clear, the blocking, the yak, physicality, dominator. I just hope he goes to a system that uses him more consistently in the pass catching. And then Loveland, again, not saying he's going to be this player, but stylistically, he reminds me of a Tony Gonzalez kind of guy.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. Gonzalez is a more old school name.
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely very, very good player though. You'd be thrilled with that from a fantasy perspective.
Yeah, I'm not saying
Loveland's
going to be a Hall of Famer like Tony Gonzalez, but just stylistically, like how kind of graceful they are. They can run routes at all three levels, really big catch radius. Yeah, I really like both players. Can't wait to see where they both go.
Yeah, so just to give a kind of a finalized thing here, on our tape grading scale, anything between a 75 to a 79.9 is fantasy starter, and anything 80 to 84.9 is elite fantasy producer. We've got these guys more on the high end of a fantasy starter rather than like an elite producer. That's not to say that they can't be elite producers. Obviously, in the right system, a lot of what goes into being an elite producer for tight end is, are you a top 2 target on your team? And in some ways that's outside of their control. So, depending on where they land and all that, like, I think these guys are going to be first round picks. Hopefully they land with a team like, the Chargers or somebody that like really needs a tight end and they have a real chance to be a top 2 pass catcher on their team. Cause if they do, they can be elite fantasy producers, but we've got them graded more in the range of like high end fantasy starter. Our composite grade is including Jackson's comes out to a 78.17 for Tyler Warren and a 77.35 for Colston Loveland. So they are very close together on that, less than a point apart. The interesting thing that I will say is Warren is consistently going in the like 5 to 7 range of your rookie drafts from what I'm seeing with mock drafts. And obviously the NFL draft could change all that. But just what I'm seeing right now, 5 to 7 range is where Warren's going. Oftentimes, Loveland has fallen all the way down to like anywhere from 112 to 202. So I think from a value perspective, they're in the same caliber, same tier of prospect to me. I would love to take the value on the guy that you can get in the early second as opposed to the guy in the mid first, because I just think they're very similar caliber of prospect. Would you agree with that, Rupert?
Absolutely. And I actually did some mocks today and I had a 203 and every time Loveland made it there. So 100% agree to take the value, again, depending on landing spots. When you said the Chargers, I just thought, oh man, Jim Harbaugh would have loved him some Tyler Warren on his team.
Yeah, he would. He would. Smash mouth. Yeah, I'm with you, man. Like 203, especially if it has tight end premium and you can get Tyler Warren at the 203, I think that's a smash draft pick. I'm pretty confident that when we, in fact, we've released Rookie Guide Volume 1, and in our overall grades, I think we've got these guys back to back. We had Warren at 8 and Loveland at 9, I think. So or vice versa. So again, I think, Warren going in the 5 to 7 range is like appropriate, but Loveland going that much later feels like a steal to me. But overall, though, in the tight end showdown, Warren does come out on top by about a point for us in our film grades, but we think really highly of both of these guys. We appreciate y'all listening. Definitely check out our free Discord if you haven't. This is not an ad, not a sales pitch. We just want to get to know the people that listen to our podcasts. We're growing a great community over there. We've got over 200 people in that Discord. Every time I log in, there's more conversation going, reacting to news, talking about these rookies, posting trades for people to give their opinions on. It's such a fun and helpful community. So definitely encourage you guys to join. The link will be in the show notes. And definitely take advantage of that Discord, because I think it's a happening place to be. So you can find Mr. Rupert on Twitter /X at Matthew Rupert FF. You can find me at CouchScouts FF. So give us a follow there. But honestly, just join the Discord because I'm going to see the DM a lot faster. I'm not on social media a ton these days. So join the Discord, hit us up in there. That's the best place to interact with us. But we appreciate you listening. Drop us a 5-star review, leave a comment. It all helps people find the